The latest read on the economy, GDP growing at a sluggish 1.1% in the second quarter. Slower than predicted, leaving the U.S. economy an average annual growth rate of 1.7% since President Obama took office. Remember when 3% was sort of normal, was like par for the course? Yep. Steve Forbes is back with us, along with Peter Morici, University of Maryland economist. Peter, I'm going to let you go first. I mean, there was a time when 3 and 4% was relatively normal. Now it seems like that would be a wild dream.
Absolutely. You know, at this stage of his recovery, which started out with even bigger unemployment than Mr. Obama, Ronald Reagan had about 4.5% growth. So look at it that way. But it's all these regulations that he promised to give us. He certainly has. And, you know, for example, you can't open a community bank. You can't get funding for a small business. If you do, it's so expensive to hire someone, with health care costing so much. Remember, he was supposed to fix that. And, of course, there's the very strong dollar, which he was supposed to fix with China. That's keeping us from growing. It's that simple.
Steve Forbes, you know, anytime you point this out to the left and you say that the economy is horrible, they either say, look at what he inherited, or they say the unemployment rate is so low. What are you complaining about? How do you respond to those two things?
Well, first of all, you just look at the labor market. The labor participation rates still stink. The increase in wages is still very low, even though there's some signs of life after 8 years of a supposed recovery. So when you look beneath the superficial numbers, it is a very, very poor economy, the worst recovery from a sharp downturn in American history. And the left, if a Republican had that kind of record, they'd be painting the president as Hoover Redux.
Yeah. Peter Morici, I mean, you know, when you say that it's because of more regulation, that's a very hard thing for regular people at home to wrap their head around what that looks like, why it's slowing the economy down so much. How do you hit that message home that that's what's slowing down the economy?
Well, I ask anyone to call, say, Vanguard if they've got an IRA or a Keogh, and try to move money from one account to another. For example, I tried to do that recently, and apparently I had my middle initial on one account but not on the other, same Social Security number. They put me through a long drill to basically make the accountants identical. Sounds like a small thing, but it repeats itself over and over again. It took people to enforce that. It took me time to do it. It took other people to implement the change, and so it goes. You know, yeah. It's become so difficult to open a bank that now it's very, very difficult to find a small bank, and they're the folks that finance small business.
It's like the government has just put gum in the wheels of everything, and they wonder why the economy isn't churning.
Right.
The current state of entrepreneurship, by the way, Nike founder Phil Knight says the negativity towards business would make it really difficult to build his company today. Listen.
Do you think you could I mean, and now
well, you know, I've been asked that a lot of times, and it's really interesting. It's an entirely different environment now. It says there's really sort of a negativity towards entrepreneurship and business in general kind of going on in this country, which is too bad. But I see it as a cycle. I don't see it as a trend.
Steve Forbes, what does that look like in real terms? So he says he couldn't start the sneaker company. So if you're a little guy at home and you say, gosh, I have this great idea, I want to start a business, what would hit you in the face right then that would make you feel like there's a negativity towards your business, what he was saying?
Well, how about trying to get, as Peter pointed out, trying to get a loan? If you look at the growth of loans to small businesses, new businesses, and households in the last 8 years, pathetic numbers. And if you don't get these new businesses, you don't get the big companies of tomorrow, which has been a great strength of this economy. And so you add that up, and in terms of trying to get a loan, the paperwork is 6 ways to Sunday, very difficult to get adequate credit. And on health care, what are the rules on health care? They come by the thousands. It makes it very difficult, and that's why small business formations in the U.S. have been going down, because the regulation tsunami really began about 15 years ago. And you look at that, it has been, as Trump would say, a disaster.
Peter, I mean, we used to celebrate the person that went out and had a great idea and turned it into a huge business. You know, Jeff Bezos that was the American dream, because it meant that anybody, no matter how poor you started, no matter how little education you had, if you had the will and the spirit and an idea, there's no limit to how high you could go. That was our ideal. Why now would people feel like there's a negativity towards that sort of aspiration and ambition?
The president has convinced minorities and middle-class people that somehow or other, each and every one of them is a victim of a big business conspiracy, and that big businesses need to be punished. Listen to Hillary Clinton's acceptance speech. I'm going to go after those people with the money. I'm going to go after corporations because that's where the money is. Remember that. So you have to understand that if you have a profit of $300,000 or $400,000, which is very modest, and you're in her home state, New York, you're paying taxes over 50%. I mean, just the process of keeping books for a sole proprietorship now, thanks to all the regulations imposed by the IRS, requires, you know, multiple professionals and a lawyer.
Yeah. No, it's very true. I mean, I watch it in my own neighborhood here in New York. Mom and pop stores that have been out, the butcher, the cleaner, been there forever, closing up, because they say they just can't do it anymore. They can't pay all the things they have to pay between the rent and the health care and everything else.
And by the way, if you want to see a vivid example of it, go on YouTube and look up a woman in Seattle, has a small pizza parlor, and hear that interview. Minority woman, going to lose her business because of Seattle's $15 minimum wage.
Absolutely. We will. All right, we got to go. Thanks to both of you.